Do you need a children's Bible story read by President Donald Trump? I didn't think so. But never fear, there's one available anyways. Noah's Ark, as narrated by your favorite president. I received this as a review copy. Now, spoiler alert, Trump doesn't actually read it, but they did use AI to create a Trump-like voice to narrate the story of Noah's Ark. We'll get to that hideousness in just a moment. First, I do want to note that I'm usually not a fan of children's books about Noah's Ark. When my son was at that age where we would have been looking for an illustrated book about Noah's Ark, I remember flipping through a bunch of them in the bookstore and really not liking any of them. And it's not just because they pretty much all have that same kind of classic era, an era that's in this one, where it says that Noah got two of every kind of animal. That's actually not true. He got two of every kind of unclean animal and seven pairs of clean animal because Noah and his family needed something to eat on the journey. I know you probably thought it was just the unicorns, that's why they didn't survive, but that's that old song reminds us. They just forgot to get on, those silly unicorns. Anyways, that's one error that you see often in them. But really, I'm more concerned as to why we think this is a kid's story. Right? We paint it on our church nurseries, but of course, leave out all of the drowning people on the wall there. That would be great for the kids, right? And so just because it has a lot of animals and we can make it like a floating zoo, doesn't mean it's actually a story that's great for kids. But anyways, that's what we've always done, and I'm not a fan of Noah's Ark's books in general for children. But given the fact that we've made this such a big story for children, I guess it's not surprising that a new company creating the President's Bible decided to start with Noah's Ark. Now, just to be clear, this is not intended to be a satire or a critique. This is intended to be sincere. It's designed for Christians who love Donald Trump and who want to teach the Bible and also support their favorite president. Which does raise a question as to why, even if you politically love Donald Trump, you would think he's the one that we should have teach our kids about the Bible. You know, Mr. 2 Corinthians and the man who curses all of the times. Fortunately, I guess they censored that part out. The AI doesn't curse in this book and doesn't use misogynist language and racist rhetoric and so on and so on. So it's at least a little cleaner version of Donald Trump. Maybe the AI Donald Trump is better than the real thing. You'll have to decide for yourself. Actually, please don't. Don't buy the book. I'm going to give you a chance to listen to it in a moment. So why would, even if you politically love Donald Trump, why would you think that's who I want to teach my kids about the Bible? A man who famously knows very little about the Bible and has admitted as much in his rhetoric and has demonstrated as much in his life. And yet, they think you would want to combine these two things. As it says in the introduction, that it is narrated by your favorite president. And in these pages, you'll hear the greatest president in American history giving you his take on Noah's Ark. Again, the thing that you were all asking for. So, what does it sound like? I mean, it's actually not too bad of an AI. It sounds a little bit lower, but in general, it sounds like Donald Trump. Here's how he starts his story.
Up because I'm going to tell you about Noah's Ark like you've never heard it before. It's going to be huge. The best story ever. Believe me, definitely not fake news.
Yeah, definitely not fake news. That's a great way to add credibility to the story by using the thing that Trump often does to discount real and actual news that he doesn't like. Now, the voice isn't the worst part of this, although I'm not a fan of AI and it is a little creepy. The worst part is really how, because Trump is the narrator in this book, Noah ends up basically becoming a Trump-like figure, which I guess shouldn't be surprising. But throughout, we can kind of see that they want us to see Trump and Noah as similar figures, right? That as Noah's building the ark, he's using the best and biggest wood anyone had ever seen. Such great wood. Then as he's picking up all the animals, we're told that Noah was sure to get the best of the very best. He was very well connected and was great at making deals. Some even say he was the greatest. Now, I'm not really sure what kind of deals we have to make on getting the animals. Maybe he's buying the animals, or he's just trying to convince the animals to come in, or he's trying to figure out what are the best 2 or 7 to get. I don't know. It's left out of this book, as well as the Bible, of course, as to what kind of deals he's actually making. And then when they land, we'll skip ahead a few pages here, but we'll jump back in a moment. So they finally land on top of a mountain with views you couldn't believe, the finest piece of real estate ever. We're talking a prime location. So yes, Noah is basically the first real estate agent and just excited about the prime real estate deal and how much he can make off of this racket of having built an ark. And then Noah looked around and said, look at this, folks. The world has been drained. We're going to make it great again. Yes. So Noah becomes Trump or Trump becomes Noah. I think that's actually really what's dangerous about this type of conflation of a biblical hero with a current political figure. It's not so much that it's going to change our opinion of Noah as much as it's designed to change our opinion of Donald Trump. To see him as a godly, divinely chosen leader, the one who's saving the world with his real estate deals and making the world great again. Even worse than all of that is that God also ends up sounding very Trumpy in this particular book. So we get our page here where God is going to be speaking through Noah. This is actually one that doesn't have as much coloration. It's just a nice light. And so at least they didn't draw God in that particular picture. But when we have God speaks to Noah and gives him this mission and sounds, well, like you would expect a Trump-voiced God to sound.
God goes to him and he says, Noah, you're doing a great job, but there's going to be a flood like you wouldn't believe. It's going to be the biggest, wettest flood. We're talking about water everywhere, levels of water no one has ever seen before.
So as we've made Donald Trump into this biblical hero and a divine figure and even almost godlike in the way that he talks, well, then that leads us to a different moral of the story. You see, the moral of this story isn't about faith, which is what, of course, Hebrews chapter 11 tells us about Noah, is that this shows Noah's faith and it proves how he lived by faith. But no, we get a different story with Donald Trump, again, telling us the moral of the story at the end of the book. And that, my friends, is how you show leadership. It's not just about building an ark or saving animals. It's about making history with God at your side. Told you it was the best story ever. So rather than a story about faith, it's a story about leadership with God at your side. Now, this is why it matters that then Donald Trump is being conflated with Noah, this heroic leader who's making history with God at his side. That matches the rhetoric that we have heard from Donald Trump himself, as well as a number of his MAGA prophets and preachers since his assassination attempt in particularly, though that rhetoric existed before. But Donald Trump has talked about since then that God spared him, God saved his life so that he would become president to make America great again, right? So that God has chosen him divinely, killed the guy behind him. Oh, well, I guess, he wasn't Noah. Didn't matter, right? He's just going to get flooded away and drowned. Kills the guy behind him, saves him, gets him elected president so that he could make America great again. That's the type of Noah figure that they're creating in this type of book. It's dangerous. It's really alarming that then Christian families are going to be reading around and putting this shine, this gloss, this interpretation onto a biblical story to make Noah seem more like Trump, to make Trump seem more godly, to normalize this type of behavior and leadership pattern. And it's going to get worse. Because I think they're going to end up making this into a whole line of books because they're literally promising to do so. At the end, there's an ad for what's coming next. Yep, the birth of Jesus. That's going to be the next AI Trump narration that the President's Bible Company is promising to create. Folks, if you thought Noah's Ark was tremendous, just wait till I tell you about the birth of Jesus. Picture this, shepherds under the stars, wise men traveling from very far, and they were very wise, believe me, and the most incredible miracle the world has ever seen. You're going to love it. I don't think so, but we'll see. I don't know. They may not give me a review copy of that one. Please, again, do not buy that one. Do not buy this one. It's alarming, though, that we have this out and that conservative Christian families are buying this book, $40 a pop, to share the gospel of Noah and Donald Trump. I almost feel like now I'm going to have to write another book, not just the Bible according to Christian Nationalists coming out October 7th, but I guess we're going to need somehow like a follow-up version of children's Bible stories, according to Christian nationalists. Again, do not buy this. We have to push back against the misuse of scripture about the ways that people are trying to conflate Donald Trump and turn him into a biblical hero, a divinely chosen figure, and even rewriting God to sound Trump-like, which there's a word for that, to put words into God's mouth and make God sound like something different. All of that's happening in this, and using the AI as the gimmick to get people to buy it and to make it sound more special. Gather around the fireplace. Let's listen to Donald Trump tell us about Noah's Ark. I mean, I just hope they don't do the David and Bathsheba story.